We're pleased to be joined now by the architect behind Fields Ranch East, Gil Hanse. Gil, welcome back to PGA Frisco. Seems like we were just here a couple years ago for the senior PGA. How's it feel for you that the next chapter of major championship golf here has arrived?
It feels great. And I think one of the things that we notice is the maturation of the golf course. When you build a brand new golf course, it takes 6, 7, 8 years before it really starts to match the vision. And I think Roger Meyer and his team here have done an amazing job of moving it forward. So I think 2 years down the road we're looking better. And I think 2 years from now we'll even look better at that point in time.
Great, thank you. Questions? We'll start over here with Alex.
Yeah, regarding the course specifically, we've been going through press conferences and the players have been going on and on about the wind and how the wind's going to be adversity for them. With construction and design of this course, is the wind something you thought about from day one, or is it something that only kind of played in the process a little bit later?
No, we 100% thought about the wind here. Anything in Texas, you're gonna deal with wind. We're building a new golf course out in West Texas, and we think about it even more out there. But we knew, and the good thing about it is it's fairly predictable where it's going to come from. I mean, it's going to come from the south, southeast, and it's going to basically blow in that direction at the time of year when major championships are held, unless we get a front coming through. And then we might get stuff coming out of the north, and we're also going to get bad stuff coming with that in terms of thunderstorms. So from the standpoint of the wind and the design, we wanted change of direction. We feel like we've got that in the design. We move around a little bit. We're downwind. We're up into it, et cetera. But we also focused, and when I say us, I mean Jim Wagner, my partner, and I. Jim's equally responsible for this. So we look at the golf course and we try to present challenges, not only through the movement of the holes and the directions of them, but also the features that you're playing into. So there are certain greens that actually sit down on the ground where you can actually bump and run a ball into it if you want to. You can knock a ball down to play into it. And there are other ones, like the second, that sit way up on a hill, and you've got to flight your ball properly going into them. So not only is it the direction of the wind, it's obviously the intensity of it, but it's the shots that we're asking you to hit. By varying those and by varying the requirements of the greens and how receptive they are, we also think we're adding another layer to the wind. But it will ultimately be every championship that's held here. It'll be the determinant of what the final score is, and certainly the difficulty of the golf course. It's just going to depend on how hard the wind blows.
Nice, and a lot of the players hinted at the uniqueness of the sight lines off the tee. I'm curious, is there a specific sight line that's a favorite or most unique one on the course from your perspective?
I keep going back to 2. Somebody asked me what my favorite hole is, and I love 2 because you got the bunker sort of short right in the fairway and then the one long left, and they overlap slightly from the tee, so it takes away some of the depth perception of what happens in between them. And I think those are things that Jim and I really feel strongly about in trying to create, I don't want to say visual uncertainty, but just a little bit of doubt in the players' heads. Because, as an architect, you're doing things to try and challenge the way they play the game and the physical striking of golf balls and positioning, et cetera. But architecture at its best is really more of a mental exercise. It's how do you plot your way around the golf course, and if there are little mental cues that don't quite register, but they ultimately will register if you study the golf course and you think about it and you practice and you learn, then it becomes a much more familiar environment. And so we like golfers. We would hate for golfers to be able to ever play one of our golf courses and just walk out the first time and go, yeah, okay, I got it. Because think about any great golf course you've ever played, that doesn't happen. So if we're trying to build, and I know great's a strong word, but if we're trying to build a really good and challenging golf course, we want to make sure that it asks compelling questions and it requires thoughtful answers. And the only way you can have thoughtful answers is to study for it.
Sure. Amy?
You just mentioned the wind obviously being a factor in your design and the level of intensity. We're expecting some 25, 30-mile-an-hour gusts this weekend. Is that pretty typical for this area? Is that factored into your design?
It is, yeah, and that's pretty typical. I think you can see 30 to 40, which obviously would start to impact playability of the golf course. I think if we stick in the 25, that's going to be perfect. From a setup, it's a wide golf course, but it's the width is effective, and from the standpoint of, yes, you get 60-yard wide fairways to hit into, but you really want to only hit to the right 20 or 30 yards of it. So I think there's an opportunity, if the wind really gusts, there's still width, but you're going to have to strike your golf ball extremely well to get to the proper side of the fairway. And so I think if we had 20 or 30 yard wide fairways out here with this type of wind, it would probably be too much, too difficult. So I think the combination of the width off of the tee, the ability to have good angles, to have certainly on the par 5 holes, thoughtful layup shots that you're going to have to do. So I think the golf course, unless the greens get super fast, which I can't imagine Kerry's going to do that. I know there'll be championship speed, but I think we're going to have an opportunity to see good ball striking rewarded, proper flighting of the golf ball, proper shaping of the golf ball, and I don't think at 25 miles an hour that it's going to render this golf course too difficult.
You mentioned seeing the maturity of the golf course. Have you seen it change and grow the most since the senior was held here?
Yes. Yeah, I think for the senior, I mean, it was what we opened to, right? I mean, the golf course wasn't even open to the public before the senior, so I think the native areas were pretty thin. The grass itself, we'd had some winter kill the year before, so there was a little bit of thinness in the fairways and some of the knobs and the higher spots that would be susceptible to winter kill. I think, we were trying hard to get those back. So I think Roger Meyer and his team have done a great job of sort of learning the golf course and what needs to be protected during the winter. When you come out of winter, how do you push things a little bit further along? And I think native grasses are so fickle because if you go in and just seed them in order to get instant establishment, they become unplayable. They become too thick. They don't look right. They all kind of lay over on top of each other. And it becomes one of those things where playability is bad and the visuals are bad. So you just have to be patient. And I know for the seniors, you can still see dirt through the natives. When you look down, from a distance they look great, but when you actually look down from the top, now all of that's gone and we're starting to see the growth underneath to take shape. So like I said, I would think by 27 we'll be in a better place. I would say probably 29 is when we're really just going to see this place in full bloom.
Last question from me. You said last week watching was really nerve-wracking for you. How different is the experience when it is completely your design and you'll be watching this weekend?
It'll be nerve-wracking. I think, one of the things that we've had, it's very interesting because we live in both worlds of golf architecture. We've got a foot firmly planted in the restoration world, and we've got a foot firmly planted in the new course world. And I think there's less pressure in the new course world because the restoration world, there's a full membership that has expectations and dreams and goals for it, whereas here, the organization that's running the championship is also the one that owns the golf course and is our client. And I think their hope matches our hope in this regard is that we just want to see a great player win. We don't really care what the score is. A lot of major championships, there's a lot of scoreboard watching at different places, and that's appropriate. I mean, obviously everyone's proud of their golf course. Here, I think it's just, let's present a great test. Hopefully we've created a golf course where we're going to inspire them to hit some really interesting shots and find some really creative ways to play the golf holes. Winning score will be what it is, but I think all of us just want a great champion hoisting the trophy on Sunday.
Thanks.
Sure.
Jim?
When you and Jim get a project, what's the difference between doing a Boston Golf Club or is it Caprock out in Nebraska?
Yeah.
To doing this? There were going to be championships here. What are the challenges you guys face then?
Yeah, I mean, this project was without a doubt the most complicated golf course we've ever built from the standpoint of the site was challenging because we had to raise everything out of the floodplain down through the areas along Panther Creek. So we had to move a lot more dirt than we normally would like to move. We had a lot of outside of the ropes stuff that we had to think about. Where do you put hospitality? Where do you put score? All the things that go with hosting major championships. And you all know this, but I mean, the footprint for hopefully a Ryder Cup here is enormous. You think about the build out outside. So normally Boston Golf Club, we never have to think about, where are you going to put the hospitality tents or where are you going to put the Wanamaker Village? How's the first tee going to set up with grandstands all the way around it for a Ryder Cup? So there were a lot of conversations out with just how do you build the golf course in order to get a golf course that you want to play, which is ultimately the final goal from a members course or even a public golf course that's not going to host major championships. And I was joking with a friend of mine the other day. He asked, what's that golf course like, meaning Fields Ranch East? And I said, well, it's Gil and Jim trying to build a hard golf course. Like, we like to build golf courses that are fun and playable. And there's challenge to them. They're not easy, but they're more focused on fun and creativity. And here we knew that the public perception of this golf course was going to be predicated on the major championships that are held here, right? So if it didn't have a certain level of difficulty, it wouldn't be regarded as a major championship test. So there might be some things that we did that we may have pushed the envelope a little further than we would have at a members course or at a public facility. I'm not saying we deviated 100% from our design philosophy, because I think you can still see a lot of what we believe in width and angles and setup and scruffy looking golf courses. That's still wholly apparent here. But I think we had to look at it through the lens of, this has to be challenging for the best players in the world. We can rely on the wind to a certain degree, but we also have to rely on the challenge that the golf course presents.
Any other questions, Jim?
Just when you took this project on, how much did they have? Okay, you got, Gil, you have so many acres, or was it, give us the best golf course and we'll work from there?
So there was a competition amongst 5 architecture groups, and we were awarded. So this is the plan we came up with. We basically came up with a plan for the clubhouse is going to sit where it sits now. The east course would sit where it was. The west course is going to sit where it sits. And then at the time, it came down to, all right, you guys do 36 holes. And as well as anybody, we're not set up to build 36 holes at a time. And so we had to gracefully say, we can't do the west. We can't do 2 golf courses. We just don't have enough people, and we don't feel like we can pay enough attention. And Bo Welling was involved in the golf course process, and he's such a great land planner that they said, Bo can do the west course, which is great. And then we started working and collaborating with Bo on the land plan and how things could work out. He had a ton of good ideas, and we obviously had a lot of input from the PGA of America. We had a lot of input from Omni. I mean, that was the other thing I didn't mention in the construction of this golf course. We had a lot of infrastructure associated with the hotel and the resort. There are amazing pipes underneath this golf course that are taking stormwater from the resort and taking it where it needs to go. So there was a lot of interaction. And then aside from that, we started it in October of 2019, and COVID hit in March. So we're right during the middle of construction, all of a sudden we've got COVID to deal with. So it was a challenge, but I couldn't be more proud of how we came through it at the other end.
Jim, you good?
But I guess really to wrap that up with a bow, it's yes, we feel like we built the best golf course we could here. And that was always first and foremost. Like, if they kept asking us to deviate from the quality of the golf course, I think we would have had a harder time. So the golf course kind of got locked in amber, and then everything else had to happen outside of it.
Okay, got it.
Great. Thanks for your time, Gil. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Cheers.